Alrighty. So up to this point, we have only learned about surface area by taking apart an object. Okay? And it's not really the most efficient way to find surface area. In fact, it might be the actual least most efficient way to find the surface area of an object. So what we're going to talk about today is kind of the 8th grade way, which I like a lot, mostly because it's shorter, right? And I like anything that gets me done faster, and I know you two too. But in order to do that, first we need to go back to what we learned on Friday. What we learned on Friday were that each of these represents something in a figure, right? Andrew, what does capital B represent in a figure? Area of the base. Capital B represents area of the base. Jackson, capital P. Perimeter of the base. And Hattai, little h. Height from base to base, which is a very important distinction. It's actually another way of saying it would be the distance between the bases. The distance between the bases. Now, guys, you're going to start getting to a point where I need you kind of going through a mental checklist every time you see one of these problems. The first thing I want you to always check for, Jonah, thank you. First thing I want you to check for is to make sure all your units of measure match, because y'all have fallen for that way more times than you should have. Look at all your measurements and make sure all units of measure match. Once they do, you can push forward. And then you kind of have to separate it. So to find the area of the base of this object, what do we need? Labib? Area is pi r squared because it's circular. So it's pi r squared. We fill in as 3.14. What is the radius? 5 squared. So we end up with 25 times 3.14. 3.14 times 25. 0, 7, 15, 0, 8, 2, 6, 0, 5, 8, 78.50 square feet. 78.5 square feet. Could you have answered 25 pi? Yes, you could have, absolutely. Because 25 pi is equivalent. It's actually a more exact amount, right? 25 pi is actually more exact because we know that 3.14 is an estimation. How do we find the perimeter of the base of something that's circular, Bennett? Perfect, because we're actually finding what? We're finding a circumference. So we have a diameter of 10. 10 times 3.14 is actually pretty easy because 10 times 3.14 is 31.4 feet. That is capital P. And the distance between the bases is simply what? 21, right? 21. Any questions on capital B, capital P, and little h on a cylinder? Yeah, go ahead, Brendan.
Why is it a lowercase
Yeah, yeah, I have no idea. I just work here. So, okay, so let's go through the process here. What is the perimeter of the base? Well, first of all, what should we do on prisms right off the bat? Yes.
Decide your bases.
Decide your bases. You want to make sure you know where the bases are. In this case, this and this are my two bases. Why do we know those are our two bases, Alex?
There are no other two sides that are opposite.
That's exactly the right answer, because there are no other two sides that are opposite and congruent. There are no other two sides that are opposite and congruent. So once we shade the bases, then we know this is called a what? Triangular prism. We know it's a prism. Why? Thank you, Cameron. There are two bases. If there are two bases, it has to be a prism. Or it's a cylinder. You're right. And the shape of the base tells us what the name of the prism is. So it's a triangular prism. So what is the perimeter of the base? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Very good. 12 centimeters. By the way, could I have left this off and had you still find the perimeter? Absolutely. Why? Because Pythagorean's theorem allows you to solve for a missing side. Okay? What is the area of the base and why? What's the area of the base and why? Jackson?
6 because it's 3 times 4
It is 6 square centimeters because every triangle is base times height divided by 2. Watch that very carefully. And what is our distance between the bases? 11. That's why the shading thing really comes in handy. The shading really comes in handy because once you shade those two bases, it's very easy to find the distance between the bases. Okay? So here is what we are going to talk about today. Hopefully you picked up a formula sheet when you walked in, because what we're going to talk about today is the 8th grade method, if you will, of finding the total and lateral surface areas. Now, someone remind me again, what's the difference between the total surface area and the lateral surface area of any object, Tara? The lateral surface area, the lateral surface area does not include our bases, or our base, in the case of a pyramid or a cone. Okay? The lateral surface area does not include the bases or the base based off whether it might also be a pyramid or a cone. So if you go down on your 8th grade formula sheet and find the formula for, well, there's actually a section. Look in the surface area section and look up prism and find me the formula for the total surface area of a prism. Brendan? And that is, ladies and gentlemen, why you need to first find H, capital P, and capital B. Because at that point, it becomes a very easy exercise to simply plug it in. Now, let's talk about this formula really quickly. For a prism, right? What does capital P stand for? What does little h stand for? Distance between the bases, right? Why is my lateral surface area formula simply this? Wait, Nolan? Because if this is the area of the base, and it has two bases, and the lateral surface area is simply the surface area without the bases, then bless you, all you have to do is take that out to find the lateral surface area. It becomes very easy to find lateral surface area. Labib? Oh no, let's look at a prism. Right? So the lateral surface area is this part in here, right? The parts without the bases, right? The area of the base times the height. Think about it this way. We'll do it in a cylinder. A cylinder is an easier thing to do. Think about a stack of you know those old compact discs, the CDs that they used to have movies and stuff on them? If you think about a stack of CDs, okay, the lateral surface area is the what? It's the outside part, right? No bases. What's the outside of a circle? The circumference or the perimeter, same thing. And then, how many of them are there? Well, it depends on how high it is. So if you think about that stack of CDs and you're trying to find the lateral surface area, you're literally just finding the circumference or the perimeter of each circle times how many of them there are times their height. That's how you end up with perimeter of the base times the height. Okay? Because you're really just measuring this outside perimeter however many times it can be stacked. Perimeter of the base times, yeah. And then you just add in the area of the base times 2, and you're there. So what you're going to actually do, and I'm going to write down the steps for you in just a second, then we're going to get in our classwork and homework. Every single time you're going to do the exact same thing over and over again. You're going to shade the bases. You're going to find capital P, capital B, and little h. You're going to write the formula, you're going to plug it in, and then you're just going to solve it. It's that simple. It's that simple. 4 steps, and you'll get it right every single time. The hardest thing to do is to determine what formula you're going to use. Okay? So for cylinders, you think it's hard, but let's talk about what it is. Because I will bet you're going to find some similarities between the prism and the cylinder. What's the formula for the total surface area of a cylinder? Claire, what is the formula for the total surface area of a cylinder? That's exactly right. Now, you think it's harder. I actually think it's easier. You know why? Because all you need is the radius and the height. You don't need the perimeter of the base and the area of the base and anything else, because here's the thing. How do you find, let's talk about capital P. That's perimeter, right? How do you find the perimeter of a circle? How do you find the circumference of a circle? Starting from the radius, Cameron. Starting from the radius, Cameron. The radius times 2 times pi. This is capital P. It's the radius times 2 times pi. It's the circumference of the circle.
Oh, the other one's the area.
And the other one, pi r squared, is the area of the base. It's the exact same formula. It's just put into circle terms. Now, here's the funny thing. If you want to, you can use this formula for a cylinder, right? Because all you have to do is find the circumference times the height plus 2 times the area of the base. Now, what you're going to end up using, you're still going to end up using all that. But if it's easier to remember, you're using the exact same thing. It's still the circumference of the perimeter of the base, area of the base, plugged in. And by the way, the lateral surface area is simply 2 pi r h. That's it. Every time. So here's what I would like for you to do while I go out and talk to Miss Alborn. Hold. I want you to please find the total and lateral surface areas of both of those objects. Thank you.
Okay, so I've only graded second grade.
My first average was a 76.2.
Okay, well, mine's going to be right there with you. I have a kid. Do you remember that kid I brought down to you? His name is
Yep.
TJ, never does his review. He made a 55 on Unit 7 test and 50 on this test. Like, he's just done.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, this test was not hard. The only two questions that I think were somewhat difficult were number 2, but it's because they're not reading.
And I thought the slope one.
By the way.
The slope one. Oh my gosh, it is. The slope one. Hold. It doesn't matter. Thing. So how many of you had written down capital B, capital P, and little h for the ones that we did as a warm-up? Good. So then it should have been very, very easy for some of you, right? Ciara, what did you get for the total surface area? Let's just say the thing. Did you separate them like this?
Oh, I thought you
Or did you?
told us to do the lateral.
I said. I think I said both.
Oh, okay. No, you said both. Yeah.
Well, someone else said I did both.
You did both. You said both.
Okay. So, yeah, it should be relatively easy once because really you've done half of it, even if you just found lateral surface area. And the reason I say that is this. If I'm doing total surface area, so we know it's 2 pi r h, 2 pi r squared. So when you fill it in, I want you to watch. This is what I want to see every time. I want to see 2 times 3.14 times 5 times 21 plus 2 times 3.14 times 5 squared. Yep. I want to see it every time. I want to see the formula, and then I want to see the filled-in formula. And in exchange, what you will then do is pick up the calculator and plug it in and get your answer. Now, what I would do if I were you is when I plugged it into the calculator, I would get this answer and then get this answer, because I am notorious for, after having you find the total surface area, asking you what in the second part? What is the lateral surface area? And if you have them separated, you don't have to recalculate anything. It's sitting right there waiting for you. Because essentially the first part of the formula is the lateral surface area. Okay? Now, I'll leave that up to you, but I don't want to hear any griping going, I cannot believe that 3 questions later you asked me for the lateral surface area of everything we did. And I'm going to say, yeah, because I told you. Bennett Powell.
So then, how is the first part 2 times 5? Yeah, that doesn't make sense. No,
Wait, which part doesn't make sense?
you have 2 times 5.
2 pi RH, 2 pi r squared.
Just multiply 2.
Okay, wait. So really, it's this times this and this times this, correct? How do you find the perimeter of a circle? Bless you. Starting from the radius.
5 times 2 times 5. Oh, there's 5 times pi, and then y 21.
Because it's h.
Oh, that's, oh yeah, okay.
Brendan?
Oh yeah, for the calculator, can we just use pi and round it to?
Nope. Because the test won't do that. Okay? If the test say use 3.14, which I want you to assume it is unless I tell you otherwise, use 3.14. Now, I will tell you sometimes I may have you go ahead and do this, but leave it in terms of pi. Just so we're clear, the way that that works is instead of 3.14, you just get to use what? You just use pi. So when you do that, you multiply this times this times this and put it in front of pi. Then you over here, you square that and multiply it times that and put it in front of pi, and then you add them together. And what is like, for example, what is 8 pi plus 12 pi? It's 20 pi.
So we can,
It literally works like a variable. So you can put it what?
can we do it in, what, say if we do it in terms of pi?
Well, if I've asked for it in terms of pi, I want it in terms of pi.
No,
Don't, if I don't say leave it in terms of pi, I want it as 3.14. Okay? Any questions on all that? So let's go over the steps that I want to see just one more time, so I don't want there to be any kind of misperception. The very first thing you do is you shade the bases, or the base. Shade the base or the bases. Step 1 every time. Step 2, find the formula you need and write it down. Now, the reason I have you find the formula next is because sometimes your formula may say you just need R and H. Sometimes the formula may say you need capital P, capital B, and little h. The formula then tells you what you must find. So step 3 is you find what you need. Now again, for a cylinder, that's probably going to be R and H. For a prism, that's going to be capital P, capital B, and little h. And I want to see them written. I want to see them written. Because if that's where you're making the mistake, I need to see that that's where you're making the mistake. And then the very last step, which is step 4, is plug into your equation, pick up your calculator, and solve. That's it. It's that simple. Yes, ma'am. It would be, yes. Okay? Any questions on what I want to see on every single one? Labib?
so basically for each one, you put like what
Yeah, if it says, if your formula, if you look it up and the formula for the lateral surface area of a prism says lateral surface area, find the formula. So you see lateral surface area equals this times this. Then what are you finding? Perimeter of the base and the distance between the bases. That's what I want to see that you found. There's no point in finding this because I didn't ask. It's not in the formula. The formula determines what you have to find. But in your heads, guys, listen carefully. In your heads, when you see these letters, I want you to say them right. I want it to be the area of the base, the perimeter of the base, or the distance between the bases, or the radius. All the time. That way, when you get into word problems where it becomes a little bit less obvious, you know how to do it. Other than that, guys, that's it. I have one short class worksheet and a homework sheet.